at the Timberman, and if I was getting paid $10, I would have gone, but that morning, my baby happened to be crying all night, and I just said, no, volunteer, I'm not going. Where this, we're not talking a lot of money, and for the amount of work they do, it's, to me, it's splitting hairs, where just throwing them that little bone will, I think, go a long way in ensuring they're
Somebody runs.
accountable to that job as opposed to just blowing it off.
I think, my feeling, and I've spoken against them more than positively for them. I wouldn't cut the supervisor's checklist to Don, because I think it's the doggiest job up there. It has to be done. They have a lot of responsibility, and if we can get people to do it for that money, we'll be lucky in the future. But I mean, that was my position in the subcommittee. I could see a little bit more for the other two, frankly, but it's up to the committee to vote on.
We vote next week, is that correct?
Or if,
Isn't that what we did last year? We presented this week and then voted the following week?
no,
No.
our procedure started off that way. And then a couple of years ago, we said, well, geez, when we're through and there appears to be total agreement, why hold off and have more discussion and vote? So I said, well, our plan is, and our schedule shows the vote next week. However, if the committee is
Okay.
satisfied and wants to vote this week, it's fine. Yes.
I guess my thought on it is, it's just, I'm conflicted on it. 'Cause we sat through a lot of presentations here of what supervisors did, and it's a lot of work. My only thought is, given what's going on with the economy and the fact that selectmen voluntarily have pulled back, I mean, wouldn't that be a rationale? As opposed to saying, we're not appreciating your workload, but under the circumstances of what everyone's going through this year, why wouldn't a reduction? I mean, that's why we're putting this in. I mean, that's off the top of my head. I mean,
Please
come
don't
on.
misunderstand me. I certainly appreciate the workload.
Right,
That's-
right.
that's
But
not part of
I would think it would be more palatable from the supervisor's point if that was our rationale.
No, I think that's a good rationale.
I would agree with
Everybody's
that.
pulling back, the selectmen have taken nothing, the school board, I assume, will take nothing this year.
And the
Come on.
sugar.
Could there be any procedure to ask them to voluntarily give up their stipend?
Yeah, but then you gotta.
I think that comes back to what Scott was saying. We're making a recommendation on money. The town meeting decides thumbs up or thumbs down on what our recommendations are.
Yeah. Well, by the time it comes to the town meeting, they'll never vote a budget down because it's an $11 million budget down for $3,000. The place we'll hear about this will be at the town budget committee. Public hearing.
Session.
And we'll hear a lot about it there, and then we'll have to visit it again.
Moving off from the secretary of the checklist, or whatever.
Supervisor.
Checklist. Sorry, it's been a long day. We had a little discussion on the duties of the treasurer and deputy treasurer during the subcommittee meeting. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, the bulk of it, they are there, hands-on, week after week, signing checks or stamping checks or whatever. But I mean, is this even a position that, I'd feel more comfortable with Jeff doing that. Jeff's doing all the background work anyhow.
I can. By state law, it's
Okay.
an elected position.
That's really my question.
Yeah. And that's to separate so that, I'm doing the books, but I can't sign anything. And really, I don't want to sign anything. I don't want to be able to sign anything because I'm in charge of making sure that the books are balanced. So somebody else is in charge of actually writing the checks. So I'm watching him to make sure that he's writing the checks he's supposed to be, and he's watching me to make sure that I'm taking the money from the accounts that it's supposed to be taken out of, and the selectmen have approved that disbursement. So it's checks and balances to make sure that the money's going where it's supposed to and coming from where it's supposed to.
And keeping the auditors happy.
Yes.
Now, would you say, workload-wise, how does the workload of the treasurer compare to the supervisor of the checklist?
I would say overall, it's probably about the same.
That's what I would guess.
The treasurer's work is more consistent. They have to reconcile the bank accounts on a monthly basis, which, you know, just like your own checking account. Some months, 5 minutes it's done. Sometimes it's several hours before because there's the dime missing here or, you know, those type of things. So it does vary, but overall, it's probably about the same as supervisors.
I'll just add one little note on the supervisor of the checklist. A friend of mine was elected a couple of years ago. When I didn't see them at last year's election, I asked, and she said it was becoming so much. It was so time consuming, and you know that she couldn't do it and work at the same time. And she worked 4 days a week, but she felt that there were just so many things that kept being added into what she was supposed to do that she couldn't do it. It had nothing to do with the money, but it was just, it is apparently a time-consuming.
But could that have been part of that extra workload? Could that have been that state requirement that they tighten up their list to do something that was a year ago or a year and a half ago, a one-time thing? Could it
Well, I
have
don't
been
know, she
that?
just said that she had to stop working because she had to give up the position because it was getting, there was just so much added, it
Yeah.
just seemed like there was something always being added that they had to do.
Yeah, I think
and
that
she
was, the
couldn't do
state
it.
asked them at one time to do, all the towns to do something. It probably
Correction
takes
versus
time.
something.
Gus?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the presented budget for the elected officials, boards and committees, admin, finance, and appraisal and technology, legal, insurance, welfare, and debt for the total amount of $1,725,657.
I'll second it.
Gus, could you repeat the number again, please? I know it's
Yep.
there, but
1,725,657.
That's the total of all those tabs.
Correct.
And that includes the money for the
Stipend.
elected officials. Just for clarification.
yeah, that's what I was just verifying. Oh, it's up there.
Is there any additional discussion on this before we vote? Fred?
This is, as is every year, I'm sure, but the merit wages, could we discuss exactly how that will affect the union side of things and what say at all we have over any sort of union line item?
Just one comment. The reason we talked about it is admin appeared to be a logical place. Merit wages are scattered throughout. So the point we were making when we raised it in the subcommittee is the principle of, okay, for several years now, the economy's been down, and yet the town employees and the school employees have gotten raises, and they have terrific benefits, contrary to public or to private. But in this case, the selectmen can give you the argument for why they felt it was essential, because you have taken away from the management.
Yep. And again, because the police, just to underscore the fact that nobody's guaranteed a raise here. Police and DPW, which are represented by their own collective bargaining units, their raises are based on merit as well. Correct, Scott? There's no guarantee.
Every employee's raise.
Right.
Keep on calling it merit, I mean, I'm a
Yeah,
little.
Well, I'm gonna
You're
get.
a good boy. If you're a good boy, you do a good
Merit-
job, you get a
merit to
merit
me-
raise.
Yep.
To me, means you're doing a good job, but in essence, what we're talking about is yet another fiscal year passing, and that's basically earns them a raise, right? It doesn't.
Well, it used to be, there was cost of living raises, there was,
Well, no. So let me just, again, explain that. That years ago, prior to me being a selectman, they had COLAs, guaranteed raises here in the town of Gilford. That didn't happen 4 years ago when I joined the board, and it hasn't had subsequently. Both unions, we negotiated with them. Their raise is based upon, again, their annual review. They don't get a guaranteed raise. They don't get guaranteed 2%, like it might be in a teacher's contract or other types of contracts. They don't get a guaranteed raise. For budgetary purposes, we have to budget something if they get it. So I believe, Scott, that we budgeted at
3%.
Is it 3? At 3%. Some could get 0, some could go all the way up to 4%. Now the reality is that very, very few people will ever get a 0, very, very few people will ever get a 4.
All right, so you're talking about 2 average around.
Right, so that's what we tried to do, the average. Some people will be, will be below that 3. There'll be a couple, obviously, like in any employment, people will be above that 3. But we're talking about the non-union workers. We felt that we did not want to take away their opportunity to get a raise, because the other 2 union contracts were obviously, those employees are given the opportunity to get a raise. And then, do the math, if you're roughly the remainder of the non-union workers, seeing that the other 2 bargaining units have the opportunity to get a raise, the fear is that our non-union workers would go unionized. It's an awful thing. It's the world we live in.
I've been saying that on this committee for 3 years now.
Yep.
Yeah, but essentially you just unionized everything.
Yeah, effectively.
What I've been saying the same thing.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep. But it's better than what the
That's
selectmen
right, they don't have
had.
a collect and bargain, I understand
But
that.
no, but it's better than what the selectmen were doing prior to me joining the board, which is giving them cost of living adjustments, guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been a big subject, you know, the COLAs were a big subject, the budget committee was very instrumental in that whole change and merit raises, because it used to be there wasn't even a performance review in a formal sense until it was such a big ruckus in this budget committee.
Right. And again, is $46,000 a lot of money? Absolutely. I have to sign my name when we take people's deeds to their homes. $46,000 is a lot of money to people. It's a lot of money to me. Again, when we look at an $11 million budget, and I hate to do that, it is an extremely small part of it. But our employees, we have taken, it is not a secret, this current board has taken many, many things away from these town employees. And this at least gives them the opportunity to do their job and do it better.
Pat, you had your hand up?
I'm just wondering, who was the ones, could we find out who the ones got the merit raises this year? Is that something that we could find out?
If I understand.
Well,
the
everyone, as far as I know, I don't think anyone got a 0.
No, I know, what
So
you're
as a
saying, it's
result, is
mandatory that
every-
they're gonna get at least 2.
No.
But some of them got more than
No.
that.
No.
There's nothing mandatory. It
Well, it's
turns
in their
out,
union contract.
oh, we're talking, this 46,000 is non-union people.
Okay.
Everybody.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody got a raise, that's,
I mean, but it includes union employees as well.
oh,
So it's union
46 is
and
everybody,
everybody.
includes the union?
Yes.
Okay, I misunderstood
Again,
that.
just budgeting the opportunity like they were gonna get a raise. That's where the 46,000.
But the raises are based on a review and
Right.
so you know what, you're worth an additional 3.
To answer your question, Pat, I do not believe, as far as I know, because we sign off on the reviews, that any town employee received a 0.
Well,
Which
you know, the thing about it is that in the past, people always got a step increase, like you said, before the units came into effect. Okay, started with the highway department, and this is no place to talk about it unless we went into executive session, okay? But I know the highway department was the first one to have the unions come in, okay? The other thing is that right now, we had recessions back in the 80s and the 90s, and it only lasted a short time, no more than 8 or 10 months or a year. This has been going on for 3 years, and it's not going to end now.
Right.
And, I know there's one aggregate company here in the Lakes region, they had one employee working for him, and he says, I can't pay you what you're getting. I gotta cut your wages because I'm not making it. And all the other employees were not getting any overtime. They came in and they worked 35 hours a week, no raises, nothing. And they got a job and they all stayed, but this other guy says, I can't, he says. So he went somewhere else to work. That's fine if he found another job. So, this is what I'm looking at to say,
Tough time.
it's tough times.
Yep.
I've never seen it this bad, and I've been in business for 43 years. Never seen it like this before. You see a lot of little contractors going out on their own. And the reason why is they got laid off from their other job, and they're going out and saying, well, I know some friends that will hire me, otherwise I am unemployed, I'm not gonna get nothing. So this is what they're doing.
No unemployment either.
And some of those people don't have any insurance. You better watch out for these guys, I'll tell you. You can get yourself in real deep trouble from it if you hire these guys to go out and work for you because they have no insurance. I know a couple of the contractors fell off the roof, and what are they doing? They're raising funds for them at Patrick's or something to pay their hospital expenses. You know damn well they never had workman's comp because workman's comp would have covered them. And some damn fool went and hired them, and here they got hurt. So when the homeowner didn't have to pay for it. But that's what's going on. So, these guys, as bad as you say, you feel sorry for them because, we got to give them a raise because they're doing a good job. You damn well they better be doing a good job. Because if they don't, they can go down the road. And the thing about it is, in the private sector, if somebody laid off people, they were still getting the same production they were doing when they had the 17 or 18 people. They laid off 3 or 4. They're still doing the same production work they were doing before because the people are working harder. And that's one thing that, what happens. Yeah, it's simple as that. But, we can't do that in this town at all. And this is where we've got to start cutting back because you people are going to have a rude awakening here. It keeps going if we don't start cutting back on employment and what we're doing in this town right now. And we should have done it 2 years ago. And I want to thank Kevin Hayes, for he's the one that started it to say we've got to cut back, and he did it last year. And we should do it again this year and keep going. Because,
Well, they
I'll tell
got
you
merit
folks,
raises last year too.
pardon?
They got merit raises last year.
Oh, I know they did. I know. And I was against it.
Yeah, it's bothered me for a long time.
You know?
That there's been a continual merit raise. Yeah.
Well, the question would be, in line with what Pat's asking and in conjunction with what Gus has said, the union people in contract, then you look at the non-union classifications. How does the spiral get broken? That involute is not changing. It's getting bigger as we go along. And I say that in sense, not just in wages, but also in the costs of what's being picked up for all the benefits as well. I haven't seen any changes in sharing of costs of the benefit packages. I know in the private sector, that happens all the time.
Well, the town is slowly paying more. It's just a small number.
The
It's
town
one
workers,
employees.
the town workers are paying more, not the town.
Yeah, the town workers are paying more every year, but
But in terms of the wages,
I agree.
that's the same argument that gets played off every year, and it just keeps ratcheting without any hard line being put in anywhere.
now, in
At least
reality,
that's the way that I see it.
this is a discussion we have to have because it affects the total budget. It's a minor impact on this budget that the motion's on the table for, because there's 5 employees involved.
One
I mean,
of which Scott isn't gonna get a raise anyway, for that merit,
Right, and, so,
and Jeff.
and Jeff, so it really has 3 employees and a couple of them are part-time, and those will be corrected whenever we make some discussion on this. I think it's good to have this discussion because it needs to be had. I mean, it depends on how we end up voting on that. I mean, I guess we'd vote on a portion of the 46,000 if you took a vote on that, because you don't have any input on the contracts. Yeah, Scott.
I think what's being overlooked is last year in the preparation of the budget, the town drastically changed its health insurance plan from a $5 copay with a $1 mail-in prescription program to a $20 copay with a $10 mail-in prescription program. And the net savings there was about $100,000. That was last year. This year, what the selectmen did was they eliminated 2 full-time positions that were paying $70,000, $80,000, not including the benefits. And then they took 4 positions where people were working and cut their pay and benefits for them. So there was a total of 6 positions in this year's budget that have been drastically altered, and positions are being eliminated. And those are some of the tough decisions that went into how are we going to scale back town government and still be able to throw a little something in terms of merit at the employees. So it was somewhat of a juggling act, but there have been some serious cuts and impacts to the staff and the size of the town government and the benefits package over the last couple of years.
And I also
But
want to
two of
remind,
those-
I also want to remind, because it was brought up, I have a lot of respect for Selectman Hayes, but Selectman Hayes is one person. This budget, this selectman, the Board of Selectmen has been cutting this budget for the last 3 years. This was not just instigated by Selectman Hayes. Selectman Hayes has been an integral part in helping us to continue to cut. As Town Administrator Dunn has made it clear, as a board, the 3 of us, 3-0, have constantly looked at this budget and looked at where can we cut these expenses. Last year, we made the difficult decision because the previous boards of selectmen decided to give part-time workers health insurance and benefits. This board, 3-0, not Mr. Hayes alone, this board voted to get rid of all of that. We have been insulted. We have been ridiculed by some people in the town for doing that. All of us did that. We all have worked hard at trying to repair what the previous boards gave us. I have respect for the previous selectmen. I have respect for the selectmen who gave up of their time with their families and their businesses and friends and so forth and so on. But this board has worked extremely hard. I challenge anyone to tell us the last time a board froze the salaries of the department managers, town administrator, laid off as many people as we've done in the last 2 years, taken as much benefits away from these people. Thank you.
Skip.
And I appreciate you keeping the budgets flat. I do. From a taxpayer, we have to look at this. It isn't just for the employees. I look at this as fairness to the taxpayers. That is our primary goal here. We are not an employment agency. We are not a social services organization. The town exists to serve the taxpayers. And sometimes I think that gets overlooked in far as services is concerned. It's the taxpayers' money that is or should be of prime importance. So I appreciate keeping the budgets flat. So I'll take a little bit of a nit here, Gus. It isn't so much that you've cut the budgets, you've kept them flat. Although you start off with a much bigger budget that you then have to scale back, but the end result has been flat budgets, rather than a real huge decrease in the budgets
I'm not going
over
to
a few
disagree
years.
with you in that sense, but when we look at line by line, there have been several major cuts into this. Unfortunately, the cost of services have gone up, the retirement, the health insurance, all of those
Understood.
things.
Right.
So when you look at it from a line by line, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
That if you're just looking, if you didn't open this book up and you said, what was the number last year? What's the number this year? Oh, that's not much of a fluctuation. I agree with you. But if you open this book up and you start looking line by line at the cuts that were made, and unfortunately where the expenses are going up, you start looking and realizing there's a lot of cuts in this, unfortunately.
Right.
These other,
It's absorbed by the
And that's
fixed cost.
and that's what we
Unfortunately.
have to look at as a line by line. You have to do the same thing. Everybody has to. But most town folk are just looking, what's the bottom number?
without a
And that's
shadow of a
it.
doubt.
And I think that's where, you know, they kind of look to us and say, are you doing the very best as far as being frugal with our dollars? Where do we go and say, where can we be even more frugal? And I think, you know, you hit it on the head, Gus. In previous years, the selectmen gave more because those were better economic times, and now it's not. And we have to say, we can't do that now, because the town folk, where the taxpayer dollars are coming from, they're getting killed.
So,
I'd like to make the point that 2 of the 6 people that Mr. Dunn is talking about, the positions that we no longer have, are not here because of attrition. People were not.
that's what every industry in the world takes advantage of. It's much better than firing a person and not hiring somebody to replace them.
Right.
There isn't a guy in the
So what
world
we've
that
done is
doesn't
we've
love
heard
that.
to what the people have said, is cut where we can. But the
Absolutely.
reality also is that we've also cut, we've reduced people that were full-time, we've made them part-time. That's the other thing too, those were difficult decisions.
I'm sure
I
they were.
I think we all have to congratulate you for that, because that's the fundamental way you will improve this budget, is to reduce the number of people. And so when you
$20
have an opportunity, you have to take advantage.
And $20 co-pays are the norm in the private sector. That's nothing more different about
And
that.
again, that was what was left to this board from years ago. It's a shame that it got that way, because I don't know any one of us that's ever paid $1 for
Right.
prescriptions year after year after year.
Or $5 to see a physician.
Right.
Just unheard of.
All right, we seem to be wandering afar, so I'm gonna put out.
Well, we have a
Okay.
motion on the table,
Yeah.
so I think that, as I mentioned a minute ago, we want to table this whole idea of merit increases and bring it back up, because it doesn't really impact, or has insignificant impact on the number that's in the motion that's on the table.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I'm not prepared to make an amendment motion, but if we added $1 to the selectmen line item,
Under
Mr.
what?
Dunn, is that under your stipend?
Not under my stipend.
Essentially,
selectmen.
under the
Why-
selectmen, no,
why-
I
Why do you
actually,
want to do that?
under,
Oh.
no, the actual
Truly
selectmen.
under selectmen?
Yeah,
Okay.
like,
Why do you want to add $1?
I would like the discretion where at the end of this year, if the budget goes according to plan, I would like to see them rewarded with up to. whatever the
33 cents?
discretion would be. Yeah, I think $500 a piece would be more than reasonable, given how much work they put in. I mean, if they didn't voluntarily cut their own money, I don't know that any one of us would question it.
You can't, you're not going to accomplish that with the dollar.
But it's an active line item, though.
Unlike an appointed employee where the selectmen ultimately can decide to pay that person whatever they want. They can find money anywhere in a budget to pay any employee anything they want. That rule does not apply to an elected official whose wages are set by town meeting. So if there's $1 in there, essentially you're paying them each 33 to 30 cents.
Yeah, you're not accomplishing what you want to accomplish.
I appreciate the
Well-
thought though, Fred, I really, really do. I know that it comes from a sincere place, and I do appreciate that. But it is, we've learned that. An elected official, if it's on that, you have to pay them that, and you can't pay them any less, and you can't pay them any more.
Maybe each selectman can donate that 33 cents to the Fred Fund.
But I do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, if only for the purpose of discussion, I would like to make a motion to amend that previous dollar total, an additional $1,500 then. I don't remember what the previous.
Yeah. The previous number we have is 1725657. You'd like to add $1,500 to that.
I would, and perhaps,
Is there a second to that?
perhaps offset by, for instance, merit wages later on. For now, again, I am of the opinion that I don't think it's fair to, especially in these sorts of positions, to expect something for nothing. Like, you can expect volunteers, but you can't expect competency and people who have to take heat day in and day out.
Well, I think you ought to stick
All
with the 1,500 amendments you made and don't add it out for ways we can't find the tentacles to. But is there a second to that motion?
Thank you very much, though, Fred, I appreciate that.
Okay, back to the original motion.
Chairman, I call for a vote.
Yeah.
Question? If anyone was going to vote to amend to reduce it by the 3230, that would have to be done before we go to Gus's motion, is that correct?
You need to make a motion to amend his motion.
I'm just asking if anybody who sat on the subcommittee was going to make that motion. I didn't say I was going to do it, I'm just asking, that was on this, you guys reviewed it.
Yes, I'll make that motion to reduce it by 3230.
I will second that motion.
Okay, so now we have an amendment to the 1,725,657 to reduce that by 3230.
That being $3,230 for the record.
So it becomes
172,227.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, just to be clear, I will be voting against the amendment only because I represent what the Board of Selectmen have already
Right.
voted for.
Right. Is there any more discussion before we have a vote? The first vote will be on the amendment, so we know what the number is that we're going to then vote on.
The amendments to cut the stipends in half.
Right, the
Correct.
amendment is to cut the stipends by 3230, which is what the subcommittee recommended.
And do we need to say also by the attendant amounts of dollars for the Social Security and Medicare, however that
Well, that's in the
spells out?
3230,
Okay.
because yeah, we got that number the other day from Scott. So, when you vote, if you're voting yes, you're voting for the 3230 to be removed. So all those in favor of the amendment to the motion, which removes the 3230, say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand.
Croc TV.